The cost of waiting. The kitchen table at my parents' house looked like a paper explosion. Medicare summary notices fanned out like tarot cards, each one revealing a different medical mystery. Assisted living brochures, glossy lies about vibrant senior communities, stacked next to handwritten lists of medication schedules. And in the center, like evidence at a crime scene, Mom's latest bill from the rehabilitation center, $387 per day. Not covered by Medicare because she'd exceeded the 100-day limit. My brother Daniel sat across from me. Tie loosened. Calculator app open on his phone. My sister Karen was on speakerphone from Phoenix. Her voice tinny through the static. "We can't keep doing this," Daniel said, not looking up from his math. Mom needs round-the-clock care. Dad can barely manage himself, let alone her. The coffee maker gurgled. Outside, the neighbor's lawnmower droned. Inside, we were drowning in decisions nobody wanted to make. The family fracture. Sunrise Senior Living called back. Karen said through the phone. They have an opening. Memory care unit, $8,900 a month. Daniel's head snapped up. That's more than Mom and Dad's combined Social Security. Their entire income is $4,800. So we use their savings. Karen shot back. The IRA has $200,000. That's, what? 2 years. 22 months, Daniel corrected. Then what? Medicaid? You've seen those places. I held Mom's Medicare card, running my thumb over the raised numbers. She'd been so proud when it arrived in the mail on her 65th birthday. Finally, she'd said, "Healthcare that can't be taken away." She didn't know Medicare doesn't cover custodial care, doesn't cover memory care, doesn't cover the slow dissolution of a mind that once balanced. The books for 3 businesses. What about home care? I suggested. Keep her here. Hire help? Daniel laughed, bitter. Home health aide. 8 hours a day. 5 days a week? That's $52,000 a year. And what about nights? Weekends? You volunteering, Mira? The accusation hung in the air. I had my radio show. Daniel had his construction business. Karen had her life in Phoenix. None of us had time to become full-time caregivers. But saying it out loud felt like betrayal. The survivor's guilt. Dad still has his faculties, Karen said, trying to redirect. What does he want? What Dad wanted was Mom back. Not this confused woman who called him by her brother's name. Not this stranger who accused him of stealing her purse every morning. He wanted his wife of 53 years. The one who knew exactly how he took his coffee and which knee hurt when rain was coming. He wants to keep her home, I said quietly. He keeps talking about Social Security survivor benefits. How if something happens to him? She'll only get 1 check instead of 2. He's more worried about her finances after he's gone than her care while he's here. That's exactly the problem, Daniel said, shoving papers aside. They're planning for death instead of planning for life. Long-term care insurance? Too expensive, they said in their 60s. Medicaid planning? We'll never need welfare, they said in their 70s. Now we're here, and every option is bad. I thought about my own finances. 39 years old, $47,000 in my 401k. No long-term care insurance. No spouse to provide caregiving. If I ended up like mom, who would sit at this table arguing about my care? I've been contributing to a Roth IRA, I said suddenly. Both Daniel and Karen went quiet. $500 a month when I can. It's not much, but withdrawals are tax-free. If mom and dad had done that, we'd have more flexibility now. Great, Mira, Daniel said. Time travel isn't an option. 3 questions every family faces. Who provides care? Family, professionals, or some combination? How do we pay? Spend down assets. Long-term care insurance or Medicaid? How do we protect relationships? Money disputes destroy families faster than illness. We were failing all 3. The HSA revelation. Karen broke the silence. Tom's mom went through this. They used her health savings account from when she was working. $60,000 saved. All tax-free for medical expenses. Mom never had an HSA, Daniel said flatly. Dad's union insurance didn't offer it. Another tool we didn't have. I'd started an HSA 2 years ago, when the station switched to a high-deductible plan. $2,800 contributed so far. If I maxed it out for the next 20 years, never touched it, invested it well, maybe I'd have enough for a few months of care. Maybe. There's another option, I said, hating myself for suggesting it. Adult daycare. Drops the home aid need to evenings only. It's about $80 a day, 5 days a week. $17,000 yearly instead of $50. You want to drop mom off like a kindergartner? Karen's voice cracked. I want to keep her safe without destroying dad. Or bankrupting the family. I snapped. What's your solution? Move back from Phoenix? Silence. The decision deferred. We sat there, 3 adult children, who'd planned our own retirements better than our parents' care. I had my Roth IRA, my HSA, my small 401k. Daniel had his SEP IRA from the business. Karen had her husband's federal pension coming. We'd learned from our parents' mistakes about saving. But we'd inherited their inability to decide. Let's try home care for 3 months, Daniel finally said. Use the IRA. If it doesn't work, Sunrise Senior Living. Karen finished. And if dad objects? I asked. Then dad needs to face reality. Medicare covers acute care, not chronic decline. Social Security provides income, not caregiving. That's the American retirement system. You're on your own for the hardest part. I gathered the papers, shoving them into a folder, labeled, Mom's Care, in my handwriting. 3 months. That was our decision. 3 months to pretend home care would magically solve everything. 3 months to avoid the real conversation. What happens when the money runs out? The radio confession. That night, on air, I broke my rule about keeping family private. Friends, I said into the microphone. I spent today fighting with my siblings about my mother's care. We have a combined century of work experience, multiple retirement accounts, and we couldn't agree on anything except that we're scared. The calls started immediately. Been there, said Roger from Youngstown. Spent my inheritance on mom's care. My siblings still won't speak to me. S2, said Maria from Canton. But we kept mom home. It nearly killed my marriage, but she died in her own bed. Medicaid planning, insisted George from Dayton. Transfer assets 5 years before you need care. It's the only way. Each caller had a different answer. None had a good answer. Here's what I learned today: the cost of waiting isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in relationships strained, conversations avoided, decisions deferred until crisis makes them for you. My parents waited too long for long-term care insurance. Waited too long for honest conversations. Waited too long to accept that love isn't always enough. Sometimes you need professional help. But maybe we're all waiting for better options, more money, clearer signs. Meanwhile, the meter runs. The home health aide charges. The assisted living facility holds the room. And families fracture along fault lines drawn by exhaustion and guilt. So here's my question for you. If you've had to choose between caregiving at home or paying for outside help, what did you decide and why? What would you tell families like mine, sitting at kitchen tables covered in Medicare notices and medicated by denial? Because here's the truth my family learned today. The real cost of indecision isn't the money you spend. It's the time you waste pretending the decision will make itself. Tomorrow, I'll tell you about the Johnsons, who used a combination of Roth withdrawals, HSA funds, and a reverse mortgage to create their own long-term care plan. It wasn't perfect, but it was decided. This is Mira Han, reminding you that the hardest part of retirement planning isn't calculating withdrawals or optimizing Social Security. It's having the conversations that matter before they become emergencies. The paperwork at my parents' kitchen table is still there. But at least now, we've started talking. When the call comes, the call came at 5:43 a.m. on a Tuesday. Not dramatic, that's the thing about life-changing moments. They arrive wearing ordinary clothes. Mira, Daniel's voice, steady but wrong. Dad fell. He was trying to help Mom to the bathroom. They're both at Kettering Medical. You need to come. I drove through empty streets, past closed coffee shops and dark windows, my hands gripping the wheel like it might fly away. At every red light, I thought about all the warnings I'd ignored, all the brochures I'd thrown away, all the conversations we'd postponed because next month would be easier. Next month had arrived wearing an ambulance bill, the hospital arithmetic, the emergency room smelled like industrial disinfectant, and other people's crises. Dad had a compressed fracture in his L3 vertebra. Mom had bruised her hip in the fall but was more confused than hurt. Asking every nurse if they'd seen her purse, the same purse she'd been looking for since 2021. The social worker arrived with a clipboard and sympathy. Medicare Part A covers the hospital stay after the deductible $1,632 for 2024. If your father needs skilled nursing for rehabilitation, Medicare covers the first 20 days fully. Then you pay $204 per day for days 21 through 100. And after 100 days? Daniel asked. Private pay or Medicaid, if you qualify. I did the math on my phone. Days 21 to 100 at $204 daily, $16,320. And that assumed he'd recover in 100 days. The social worker's eyes said what her mouth wouldn't. He probably wouldn't. What about Mom? Karen asked. Finally here from Phoenix. Still wearing yesterday's clothes. Medicare doesn't cover custodial care. If she can't manage at home alone while your father rehabilitates. She trailed off, letting us fill the blank with our worst financial fears. The kitchen table summit. 3 days later, we sat at the same kitchen table, where we'd argued about hypotheticals. Now the hypotheticals had room numbers and daily rates. Dad would go to Valley View. Rehabilitation Medicare would cover 20 days, then $204 daily. Mom couldn't stay home alone. Sunrise Senior Living had an opening in their memory care unit. $8,900 monthly. No Medicare coverage, private pay only. Daniel spread out their financial statements like evidence. Social Security dad gets $2,400. Mom gets $1,400 as spousal benefit. If dad dies first, Mom gets his $2,400 as survivor benefit but loses her own. Total income drops from $3,800 to $2,400. Their traditional IRA has $198,000 left, Karen added. At this burn rate, Dad's rehab, plus Mom's memory care, that's maybe 15 months. Then Medicaid? I asked. Then Medicaid spin down. House has to go. Everything has to go. Down to $2,000 in assets. We sat with that. The house they bought in 1979 for $47,000. Now worth $280,000. The place where we'd marked our heights on the door frame. Where Mom taught me to make pie crust. Where Dad built that ridiculous treehouse that violated every city code, but stood for 20 years. Gone. When health changes overnight. Here's what to check first. Medicare coverage limits Part A covers hospital and limited rehab, not long-term care. Social Security survivor benefits widower gets. The higher benefit loses the smaller. Cash flow options IRAs. 401 kiloseconds. Roth accounts, home equity. We had 72 hours to decide Mom's placement. The rehab center would discharge Dad in 20 days unless we could pay. The clock wasn't ticking, it was screaming. The radio revelation. That night, I sat in my studio, staring at the microphone. I'd been giving advice for 15 years. Telling people about long-term care insurance, about Medicaid, planning, about having tough conversations early. And here I was, drowning in exactly the crisis I'd warned others about. I thought about Tom from Cincinnati with his $900,000 he was afraid to spend. About Sandra from Columbus, resentful of her RMDs. About Betty from Zanesville, shopping at Goodwill with $700,000 in the bank. They were all protecting themselves from this moment, the moment when numbers on statements became daily survival math. But they were also missing the point. Dad hadn't fallen because he lacked long-term care insurance. He fell because at 78, he was trying to be a full-time caregiver. Mom wasn't confused because we'd failed to plan. She was confused because brains sometimes break. And no amount of Roth conversions can fix that. I pulled up emails from listeners. Hundreds of families in the same position. Children deciding between bankruptcy and guilt. Parents choosing between dignity and depleting everything they'd saved. The decision. At 11 p.m., I went on air. Friends, this is Mira Han with a special edition of My Sequence. I'm not talking to you tonight as your host. I'm talking as a daughter sitting in a hospital parking lot, trying to figure out how to pay for my parents' care without losing their home. The board stayed dark. No calls. Everyone listening. 3 days ago, my dad fell helping my mom. Medicare covers his rehab for 20 days. Then we paid $204 daily. Mom needs memory care at $8,900 monthly. Medicare covers zero. Their IRA might last 15 months. Then it's Medicaid, which means selling everything. I paused, swallowed hard. We had options once. Long-term care insurance in their 60s, they said too expensive. Roth conversions in their 70s, they said too complicated. Home health aid earlier this year, they said not yet. Every "not yet" led to this week. But here's what I learned in that hospital room. The financial plan isn't the life plan. My dad's not a Medicare code. My mom's not a Medicaid application. They're people who deserve dignity, even if it costs everything they save. So tomorrow, we're starting something new. My Sequence, the crisis episodes. Real families, real medical emergencies, real financial decisions. Not the theoretical stuff, the actual bills. The actual applications. The actual family meetings where siblings fight and cry and finally decide. The phones exploded. Every line, blazing. Because here's the truth, most of us will face this. If not for parents, for spouses. If not for spouses, for ourselves. Medicare doesn't cover what we think it covers. Social Security survivor benefits don't replace what we lose. Long-term care insurance might help if you buy it early enough, and can afford the premiums that keep climbing. But mostly, we'll face this with whatever we have: some savings, some family, some faith that it'll work out. And somehow, it does. Not perfectly, not cheaply, but love finds a way to afford what matters. I thought about Dad in his hospital bed. Worried about Mom even through the morphine. About Mom, confused but still reaching for his hand when she saw him. The sequence remains the same, I said. People first. Time second. Money third. Especially when the money runs out. So here's my question for you watching: if your parents faced a sudden health crisis, what was the hardest decision? The money part or the meaning part? Comment below, so others can learn from your story. Because tomorrow, I'm sharing our decision: we're keeping Mom home with Dad, hiring round-the-clock care, using the IRA until it's gone, then selling the house. It's not the smartest financial move, but it's the one we can live with. This is Mira Han, reminding you that sometimes the best retirement plan is admitting the plan has changed.